Well, okay. It's just a small group of us in this class, and so I'm not going to individually, or I'm not going to globally mute mics. If it gets to be a problem, I'll just ask everybody to mute themselves. But I want to leave the microphones open because if you want to ask any questions during tonight's presentation, I want you to be able to have that ability. The first thing I wanted to just double check on, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Very, very good. I don't know, does anybody using their, I'm dialed in on my computer and I have my webcam open. It looks like all of you dialed in on the phone, and that's fine. But just know that I am recording this, and I will be posting it in the classroom as well. So if you want to look at it at another time. I'm sort of a stickler for starting and ending on time. You'll learn that about me. So people may join us late, but we'll probably do more of these presentations throughout this course. And if you ever get stuck and you can't quite get here on time, that's okay. Just come in late. Just know that I'm probably already started, and I'm more than happy to get you caught up. So let me first of all just start off with what I think you can take away from tonight's presentation. As I look at your individual assignment of formulating your problem and your purpose statement, I think tonight's presentation will help you begin to think about, or at least help you continue this exercise, and kind of also show where you'll be able to get your 700 to what do they say, 700 to 1,000 words on this section. So I think what you'll take away from this is have a little bit more leverage for conducting that. Hi, Melinda. It's good to see you here.
Hello.
So I'm gonna. I am sharing my screen. I know all of you are on mute, but if you were the PowerPoint presentation that you'll see, I think you also have it posted in the class. Although I did add a few slides, and I'll highlight those for you on the phone as I go through this tonight. But this presentation was originally built by myself and Dr. Mansoura Kabrici, who is the University Research Chair for the Center for Educational and Instructional Technology Research. Myself, I think I'm the Dean of Research and Scholarship, but I'm also the Senior University Research Chair for the Center for Leadership Studies and Educational Research. And Mansoura and I have done workshops like this. We call it our Apple series, Advancing the Practitioner's Professional Life. And originally it was aimed, as if you've gone through the PowerPoint, you've seen that it was originally aimed at faculty members. And so knowing that faculty members are struggling or doing the same sorts of things that students are doing, tells you that that we're all lifelong learners, that there's always ways to increase and hone your skills. Just a second here. I'm trying to get rid of something that's in my way. So the first thing that I wanted to I'm having some problems here with my computer. Hold on. Okay. Now I think I can move forward. What I'm going to share with you tonight, and please, if any time along the way that you have questions, don't hesitate just to speak up. I'm happy to take questions as we move through this. So the original purpose of this was to really help our faculty understand how to get alignment for QRM review, for quality methods review. It's equally valuable to learners as well. And so what I'm going to go through in this presentation tonight is really talking about the research triad. Now, the triad is formed by your problem, your purpose, and your research questions. And one of the things that you'll hear time and time again from teachers instructors that you'll take classes from, maybe from your dissertation chair or committee members or the methodologist that you'll be working with, is that they'll talk about alignment. And alignment really starts with making sure that this triad, these three critical pieces, talk to each other. Because when they don't talk to each other, that's when we begin to have misalignment or what I call drift within the dissertation. And I'll speak more to that as we go through here. But keep in mind, this triad, these three pieces are really critical for your success. And also, and I think they're kind of the funnest pieces to build as well. It's why you got into the doctoral program. If you had a curiosity, a wonder, or something that you're wanting to understand better, fix, address, explore. So whatever those passions are, this triad exercise will help you begin to formulate them in a research approach that will help you build that kind of alignment. So again, and this is just off the research triad, the problem, purpose, and research question is the most important construct that you can create. And the good news is we're going to create it in this class. It's the triad that sets the direction for your study. The formulation begins with the construction of the study title, and this workshop really introduces strategies, again, for alignment through quality methods review. So let me talk a little bit about why this is so important. And for you folks on the phone, you can look at your PowerPoint, but it's the slide that says driving down the pillars. It's very interesting how this triad works to really form the foundations, the critical support functions for your dissertation proposal and for your completed dissertation as well. So when we start, and it may seem out of order, but I'm gonna walk you through why each of these pieces is critical. When we start talking about, yes, is there a question? Okay. When we start talking about the problem, first of all, in your chapter 1, in your dissertation proposal, you will basically have all three of these elements. You'll start off with your introduction, which is basically your narrative hook. What brought you into the study. That's sort of the foreshadow to the problem itself. Then you'll start off with your general problem, and then move to a more specific problem. And then also in your chapter 1, once your problem is articulated, then you'll move to the purpose. Once the problem signals what's wrong, incomplete, or a gap that's around the literature. I'll talk more about that here in a minute. And the purpose statement sets the direction for your study, how you're going to approach that problem. And then the research questions or hypotheses are also found within your chapter 1, and that once you've located your problem, once you've articulated how you're going to approach it, we then begin to set up our research questions that we're going to set about to answer later on in our chapter 4 and chapter 5 of our dissertation. But when we think about what these statements do in terms of creating those critical pillars, success pillars for your dissertation proposal, the problem is really the anchor for chapter 2. And let me explain why that's why that's true. Why your literature review chapter, which is typically what happens in chapter 2 in a dissertation, is we do the review of the literature surrounding your study. Let me just say this: a functional problem statement is a reaction to something that's missing, incomplete, and or wrong in the theoretical or practical literature concerning your phenomena of interest. So when we start thinking about chapter 2, when we start figuring out what literatures we want to look at, we're really looking at the literatures that are surrounding this problem, surrounding what's wrong, what's incomplete, what's missing. Where do we locate your study within the theoretical literature? So in many ways, chapter 2 is really all about the problem. We're really exploring the theoretical and practical literatures around the problem that you have, and that's why this problem statement is so critical in your formulation. Again, while I think it's the critical pillar for chapter 2, keep in mind all 3 of these statements show up in your chapter 1. Now, having said that, when we look at the purpose statement, the purpose of your research study, that's really what chapter 1 is all about. Chapter 1 is your introductory chapter. And while we do want to show what foreshadowed you to coming into the study, what brought you there, to foreshadow the problem statement itself, what the elements in the literature that might be missing, chapter 1 is really about articulating a clear and concise purpose statement. And that's also an exercise that's related to the class exercise that we're going through right now, that 700 to 1,000 words that you're going to have to produce around the problem and the purpose. But chapter 1 that purpose statement is really the critical element in chapter 1, because it tells the person what it is that you're going to do about the problem at hand. Chapter 2 then, remember, is really begins to highlight all the areas of what you understand, how you understand what's surrounding this problem within the theoretical or practical literature. Now, when we get to the research questions or hypotheses, what we're really talking about here is your chapter 3, and this is your methodological chapter, your methods. And the reason why our research questions are really so important to chapter 3 is we don't go out and choose a research approach, a research method, and then try to select our research questions. We form our problem, we form our purpose statement, we develop our research questions, and then we seek what's the best tool that's available to us, the best research tool that we have that can lend itself to answering our research questions. So again, these 3 statements, the problem, the purpose, and the research questions, are critical for critical pillars for your success in producing your dissertation proposal. And I do have examples about how these things work together. Whether we get to them all tonight or not, I'm not certain, but if not, we'll have another session where we can talk more about how these things develop and work together. So let me just talk a few things that I've shared with some of the others. And one of the things that, particularly where you are in this developmental process, is to think about, what's your study title? If somebody was to approach you on an elevator and say, and you were talking to them, and they say, I'm a doctoral student at the University of Phoenix, and they go, oh, that's interesting. What are you studying? You should be able to answer that question on the time it takes to go from one floor to the next. That my study's about, and until you get that comfortable, I don't think you've really solidified where you are. So be thinking about your elevator speech. Be thinking about what is this title. And so of the many opportunities to explore the literature, I think trying to come up with a great topic and a great title is a very practical and useful approach. And so in the PowerPoint itself, I talk about various things that you may find important in terms of developing this title. I think in this exercise where you are in your journey, it's really about starting to be able to determine the researchability of your topic. Many of us have great ideas. I've heard great potential topics, but then when we start drilling into it, the researchability, the access to the data, the access to the participants may not be as easy as one would have hoped. I know I have several doctoral students in the field right now, one in the education area where she's had tremendous difficulties getting research sites because her research involves children. And because of the protections that they have, it does make it challenging. So I think trying to focus on your title, and I would recommend this in this exercise that we're doing in the class that's due this week, to spell out a tentative title. You don't have to worry about whether it's let me just say this. When it comes to producing the title right now, there is no wrong. There's just try. And so, take a shot at it. Try to take a shot at what your title might be. Trust me, it's going to grow, it's going to develop, it's going to mature, it's going to age well. But, as you start thinking about what your study or what your area of interest is, this is just a great place to start. So one of the things that once you develop a title is to begin to identify some references that are associated with your phenomenon interest. And I don't think you have to go out very deep into the literature at this point in time, but if you can identify 3 or 4 key references surrounding or associated or that it's near your phenomenon of interest, then I think you're on your way. And then you can use this. I have another exercise that I'll share in class about building the tree of knowledge, but it's about how we constantly begin to improve and to expand the literatures that will support our research study. And I'll share those off here this week. But ask yourself, as you identify these references that are surrounding your phenomena of interest, are the references, do they confirm what your suspicions or your positions are? That's good. If you dial in and you find some references that are really confirming that your problem is a very important problem, that it is critical, that it needs to be addressed, those are really good references to find. And so if you find them, that's great. And then move away when you're reading those references. Look for those researchers or those citations where there were individuals who had a different view or were counter to the references that you found. They were detractors or critics of these positions. Oftentimes, finding the critics is a really great way to expand your literature chapter and to really help build the discussion around it. So again, these are all in the PowerPoint. These are just simple little practices that you can use to help you with this exercise. And in the next page, I do talk about how to continue to expand and move through this literature search. And I know in the course material itself, there are several exercises about looking at the literature, how to do the literature. I know we looked at a video around that. So continue to look at how you begin to build your connection to the literature. I can't understate this or overstate this enough. Being connected, let me just tell you this, folks. I've been leading doctoral students for 25 years. And I don't mean to sound cold about this, but I understand who the pretenders are and who the contenders are by how you're connected into the literature around your topic. If you're not into the stacks, if you're not looking at articles and other researchers who are close to your topic or surrounding your phenomenon interest, then you're really at a disadvantage. Those students who have taken the time to connect their study to the theoretical and practical literatures in their fields just have a competitive advantage. You're just going to be more prepared to move your document forward. Don't undersell taking the time to research and look for articles and books surrounding your topic so that you can begin to understand it more fully. I'm not trying to brag here, but when I did my doctoral research at the University of Nebraska many, many years ago, I actually had looked over 480 different theoretical articles if in my literature review. And it gave me real power when it came to writing up my dissertation, and real power when it came to the oral defense as well. So this effort that you will make into connecting your research to the literature will not be wasted. It's one of the most important things that you can do. I don't want to undersell that, and that's why I also will post this exercise that you can do on a continual basis called Building the Tree of Knowledge, and I'll make sure I get that into the course room here in the next couple of days. I want to talk a little bit about the problem statement itself. And this is the opportunity for you to begin, for the exercise that we're working on, for you to begin building your own problem statement. The problem statement is directly informed by the scholarly literature. And that's what I was just saying. You have to position and frame your study within the literature. As Borg and Gall said in 1996, the imagination and insight that goes into defining the research problem usually determines the ultimate value of the research study more than any other factor. You're laying down the foundational bricks for your study. Don't shortcut this. Take the time to build a solid foundation. You'll be happy that you do. If you try to gloss over this and shortchange this, you'll end up paying for it in the long run. And I'm talking from experience here, folks. So this is a critical place for you to really begin to look at how your problem statement, or to begin forming your problem statement. The problem statement in a doctoral dissertation is one of the most critical components. It explains the rationale for the study, and it validates its importance. And there are certain things steps I think that will be helpful to this, helpful for you creating it. The background information. When we talk about, we'll talk about a narrative hook. That's what hooks the reader. So when we start talking about background, what led you to this study? Why is this study critical to you? Coming up with a good introductory paragraph is a great way to begin to foreshadow your general problem and your specific problem. We need to look at the scholar support and that you need in putting these things together. So again, as we start moving through this, you'll find that connection to the theoretical literature is going to be a critical element for your success, and actually it's a critical for success for all doctoral researches. So in your for your exercise, and I added this slide, so you may not have it, and I'll make sure I put it in the course room tomorrow morning. But it says what this slide says is in a few sentences, introduce the problem by sharing background information. This information provides the context. And as you may be asking, how am I going to come up with 700 to 1,000 words in this exercise? Well, beginning to share the background information is one way that you do this. So let me just, for those that are on the phone, I'm just going to read this example that's in the slide deck about how to begin forming this problem statement. And this is just basically sort of an introduction. So breast cancer and the harsh treatment for the disease affect not only the cancer patients, but their caretakers alike. While caring for a breast cancer patient, caregivers face physical and mental challenges while continuing to assume significant caretaking responsibilities. Even when the patient is hospitalized, caregiving duties do not stop. Caregiving often becomes a full-time responsibility for the caregiver, which can last for many years. Due to the extended need for caregiving, the caregiver is at risk from developing a serious illness. And then there's a citation. In the instance of a wife with breast cancer, the husband is often the caregiver. A large majority of male caregivers report that caregiving duties are a burden for them physically, psychologically, economically, socially, and personally. And then there's another citation. Why I took the time to read that is not only is this interesting, particularly it would be very interesting to people who are currently caregivers or trying to support caregivers. I actually think it begins to foreshadow, to hook the reader into the importance of your study. So be thinking about the background, the introduction, the foreshadow to your problem as well in this exercise. You know, risk a few sentences and a couple of citations to help give some support to what you're trying to produce. And again, I will share this out as we tomorrow. And then in the next slide, I add this one as well. It talks about the general problem, and you need to do that for this exercise. So I provided here a kind of a very general format that you could use to begin to look at how a general problem is formed. And it's pretty simple, folks. It says the general problem is blank resulting in blank. In the first blank, state the general problem that your project will address. In the second blank, state the negative consequences of the problem. So for example, in the study that I was just sharing with you, we can say that the general problem is breast cancer is diagnosed at significantly high rates, resulting in increased demands for husbands to be caregivers to their wives. That's a very good problem statement. And so you can use this template, this approach, to begin formulating the problems for your exercise or for your assignment as well. And then the scholarly support. As I said before, once you state your problem, your general problem, you can support that with citations from the literature. So again, there's an example here where a brief paragraph where we add some development to our statement. Due to demands in taking care of breast cancer patients, male caregivers are at risk of becoming physically and psychologically ill. Citation. A wife's breast cancer diagnosis causes individual risk for the male caregiver, resulting in psychological and physical health impairment. Citation. Because male caregivers are such a high risk of becoming ill, they must practice good self-care. Again, what this does is it just gives more scholarly support to your problem, to your general problem. Now we can get to your specific problem. The specific problem is really where you're going to be aiming at the for your study. And so in this case, the specific problem for the study that we're talking about, the specific problem is that male caregivers have a demanding caretaking schedule and do not practice good self-care, resulting in their own compromised health, with the citation. So you can begin to see how we took this problem, and maybe this is, in this example, I'm making this up, maybe the student who created this original study, maybe they were found themselves in that role, or had experienced that role, or knew friends that were in that caregiving role and saw it, and they used that curiosity, that passion to drive this study forward. And you can see how we move from the general to the specific. Again, this example I have I added to the deck, so you don't have it here, but I'll make sure that I update that in the first thing in the morning. So, and after we do our specific problem, then we can add more scholarly support. So another brief paragraph. To ensure his own well-being and to be able to provide care for his spouse, male caregivers must make themselves a priority and practice self-care. Family Caregiving Alliance 2018 noted that caregivers who take care of their own physical and mental health are better able to manage challenges of caring for the sick spouse. Another citation. It's important that male caregivers to take an inventory of their own self-care and integrate self-care activities. Some male caregivers tend to feel guilty for putting themselves first. However, male caregivers must consider that they will not be able to provide care for their spouses if they were become ill themselves. Another citation. So again, state, lead, foreshadow. What is this study all about? Risk that introduction. State the general problem, provide some scholarly support, and then develop the specific problem and follow it up with some scholarly support, and then simply conclude with a brief commentary in a single sentence about the potential benefits of the study. And the example that I've been talking about here, understanding why male caregivers do not, understanding why male caregivers do not good practice. Ha! There's a typo in this sentence here. Do not provide good practice self-care, and impossible barriers preventing self-care. Could encourage healthcare practitioners to create support systems to promote good self-care and a positive health for male caregivers. Anyway, let me just pause here and see if there's any questions or discussions about how we might go about ground zero to producing a viable, positive, general and specific problem. I'll pause for it. I'll pause for questions or comments. Okay, I'm giving the good educator 30-second pause here. It's okay if you don't have questions. You can always contact me individually or write me emails and ask questions as well. So let me move on to some more items about the problem statement. What a brief review of the literature will reveal for you, I think, is to help you clarify the need or opportunity. Again, what I've said earlier, what I think makes for a really good problem statement is when it's a reaction to something that's missing, incomplete, and or wrong within the theoretical or practical literature. So the need or opportunity that you have in creating your problem statement is that it could fill a gap or a void in the literature, practical or theoretical. It can expand and extend the current knowledge around this phenomena. It can address a critical point. It can correct. It can explain. It can examine. You can give voice to something. There are many good phenomenological studies or narrative studies that are really about trying to give voice to something that really needs to be heard that currently hasn't been heard. Establish a new perspective or contribute or add. So what we really get down to is that the problem to be addressed by your study comes down to the need or an opportunity. So be thinking about what that problem statement might look like. And let me just say this again, because this class is for learning how to do this. Nobody came into this class knowing how to write a research triad. So I'm not operating under some illusion that I'm going to see fully polished problems, purposes, and research questions as we move through these exercises. But what I can do is once you have this down on paper and you share it out with your peers for them to look at it, and for myself as well, is I can begin then using my experience and expertise to help you shape it, help you grow it, help you move it to that very polished problem, purpose, and research questions, which will help you move forward. I will share with you what my mentor, I was very fortunate. My mentor was Dr. John Creswell. He is at the University of Nebraska where I went. And one of the things that I remember him saying as a young doctoral student is, Mark, the first thing you got to do is get crap on paper. And he meant that. He said, I can't do anything until you got crap on paper. So don't worry about it being perfect. Just give it a try. And I'll help you shape it. We'll all react to these things together. again, take that attitude that there is no wrong, there's just try. Now, if you don't try, that's wrong. So keep that in mind too. But I will help you move this forward through this class and beyond if you need help. I'm easy to find. So one of the things I want to talk about, I'm going to move through a couple of slides here because I want to get to this process about your title. I want you to gain that researcher's perspective concerning your phenomena of interest. So I would like, as part of your 700,000 words for this exercise, to take a risk about your title of your study, even if it's tentative. And if you find that too difficult, just take a risk here. So think about it this way: you can, if you can't just articulate a good title, try completing this statement: my study is about, or I'm curious about, or if you can't quite come up with a title, sometimes it's a question. Like one of the examples I have here is what are the disorienting dilemmas faced by first-year teachers? So even just starting off with a question or a curiosity or a wonder, I think is a good place to start with your title. I think a lot of beginning researchers think they have to have a research-sounding title. Trust me, it'll come as you begin developing. So for now, don't worry about winning some Nobel Prize or anything from your study. Just get some crap on paper. And we'll continue to talk and to develop it as we go through this class. I think one of the things that you do need to think about is your degree program, and to make sure that your study is in alignment with your degree program. So, does your title reflect a study which should come from the University of Phoenix, and more particular, comes from the University of Phoenix and whatever degree program you're in, whether it's EDD or DBA or whatever program that you're in. It should reflect something that would be in that content area. And if you have challenges with that, just let me know. I'm happy to put you in direct contact with some of the academic deans of instruction that run these areas to help you get more situated. Or better yet, if you are having a hard time coming up with a good topic, I would recommend going to the research centers. There's a lot of good faculty, a lot of good leaders at the centers who are more than willing to help you. All you have to do is ask. But when I talk about the study title, does it come from the Phoenix? There are two things that this question answers. One, is your study researchable? I know that may not make a lot of sense to some of you right now, what researchability is. But sometimes I think we pick topics that we're just way too close to. And while they may not be, like for example, I just recently saw a student who wanted to study her own family as they were going through a very traumatic event. While I think there could be real power in studying a family going through a traumatic event and how they process it, how they heal from it, how they support each other, I agreed with all of her assertions that at the core that it's probably a good study. I just don't think it's a good study for her. I think she's way too close to it. She'd be better off to go find another family who's going through this and studying from them. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Many times when you're way too close, the bias and the influences that we have will override that. So be thinking about the researchability of your study. And second, related is to research practices or policies. Is your study really in alignment with your degree program? I think that's very important. I'll just leave you with one quote for you folks that are on the phone. The working title should be seen as a major road sign of the study. Early on, let me emphasize that. Early on, it serves as a delimiting construct, a tangible idea to keep refocusing on and changing as the project goes on. So, whatever you come up with now, don't lock that in. When you lock on, you lock out. It's just a working title, and it will change. Trust me, as you go through. Again, some of the processes that I would talk about, and my mentor would say that the first step in any project is to spend considerable time in the library or in library searches examining the research on the topic. This point cannot be overemphasized. Be thinking about how your project will contribute to the literature, not just the theoretical literature, but we're talking about practitioner-focused projects. So, can it also contribute to practice as well? So, it's not just that if your study can contribute to theory. Could also be talking about how it can contribute to practice. I think answering these questions in a rudimentary way, the problem will be addressed by the study. So again, we're just sort of talking about some base ways to approach this. So I'm back I'm back driving down the pillars. I'm back to that process. But what I would like to do now is to just show on my screen. I have an example triad, and I want to just use this one for tonight. And again, you should, if you have the PowerPoint deck, you have this in front of you. This is actually from an actual dissertation, and all I did was go in and took these things out. And the reason why I took them out is because I wanted you to see what alignment really looks like, and how these statements are really similar to each other. So in the example that I have in front of me, this researcher said that the problem to be addressed by this study is the need to understand transformational learning in adults coping with unpredictable, incurable chronic illness according to the lived experiences of adults coping with multiple sclerosis. That's the problem. This is a very specific problem. The general problem would have been much more general to all chronic illnesses. The specific one here comes down to multiple sclerosis. The problem, let me say that again, the problem to be addressed by the study is the need to understand transformational learning in adults coping with unpredictable, incurable chronic illness according to the lived experience of adults coping with multiple sclerosis. The purpose of this phenomenological study is to explore the transformational learning in adults coping with chronic illness as described by the essence of the lived experience of adults learning to cope with multiple sclerosis. So what you can see, or hear in this case, if you're on the phone, is that there's direct alignment, direct connection between the problem and the purpose. There's no drift between them. Even many of the words are the same. You don't have to get all that creative. And once you've got one statement locked in, the other statements should follow along pretty well. And to continue this example, the question is then, what can be understood about transformational learning in adults coping with chronic illness from the essence of the lived experience of adults coping with multiple sclerosis? The reason why I use this triad as an example is, as you can see, once we built one component, we use the other components, we use that statement as a way to begin to frame the purpose and the questions themselves. They talk to each other. There's complete alignment between these three statements. So don't overthink that. Don't think you've got your purpose statement has to be completely different than your problem statement. They're related to each other. And your question is related to that purpose. So again, I wanted to highlight this example for you as you try out your building your problem and purpose statement. I know this exercise doesn't require you to do the research question. That's something that we're going to do this next week. But the problem and purpose is part of this. Let me see if I go on here. I have, let's see. I went the wrong way. Again, I provide some on slide 29 of the new deck. What I also provided for you was another example where I did the complete example for you. So I shared with you, again, this is out of a completed dissertation. Actually, this is out of an outstanding dissertation. I have to tell you, it's one of the better ones I've ever read. But the paragraph that you'll see on slide 29 of the new deck, and I'll share that out in the morning, shows kind of a narrative hook. It introduces the study, and I think for you this exercise this week, having that kind of introduction or trying introduction is very important. One of the things I want you to notice, and this doesn't mean that you can't have citations in your introduction. I want you to see that she did not have any citations. What she was really doing was talking to her readers. She was talking about what happens in this secondary direct manner where people can have the symptoms of PTS without actually having been part of it. It's actually a secondary direct matter. This is a great study, folks. But this example shows this introductory paragraph. And then on the next slide, slide 30 of 41, is where she starts to build her specific problem. And so now, all of a sudden, she starts to bring in the literature. She starts to connect her literature to her problem itself. And by the way, I didn't share the whole, there's many paragraphs here. I just pulled out a few for you to see because I didn't want to overwhelm you with what you have to do in your task. But you'll notice once she's done all this introduction, she's done all this foreshadow to her problem, she ends up with, therefore, the problem to be addressed by this study is the lack of a theory that explains the nature of PTS experience of persons exposed to a major natural disaster in a secondary direct manner. So, for example, we see all the fires that are going on in California. I think one of our classmates was actually very close to those fires. But there were a lot of people that were infected directly by that, who probably could suffer PTS in a first-hand experience. But there's also many people who are feeling the stress of this in a secondary manner. In other words, they didn't experience it themselves, but because of the loved ones, friends, or other people, they feel it anyway. And this is what this study was all about. I've got to start watching my time here just a bit. I also know that you have to write a purpose statement. You're at a little bit of a disadvantage, and I'm not sure how to handle it because good purpose statements really set the direction for the research, and they often establish the method that you're going to use as well. You have not been exposed to enough research tools to really be able to choose whether you're going to be using grounded theory, phenomenology, case study, a survey. I think you're just. I don't think you've been exposed enough to research tools to really bring in the method approach, but. One of the things I did want to, but I do think there's some tricks to writing good purpose statements. So, whereas the introduction focuses on the problem leading to the study, the purpose statement establishes the direction of the research. In fact, the purpose statement is the most important statement in the entire research study. So keep this in mind that as you go through your program, and you start picking up some of these research tools, I think it'll help you in beginning to formulate some of these problem statements. So, purpose statements. So, in the study that I was just sharing with you, her purpose statement was the purpose of this grounded theory study is to discover the nature of post-trauma experiences for persons exposed to a major natural disaster in a secondary direct manner, resulting in a major theory that it describes this phenomenon of interest. Now, again, I think it's premature for you to identify that you're going to be doing a grounded theory or a correlational study or whatever it might be. And so for you, I just want you to talk about the purpose of the study would be to discover, to explore, to understand, whatever it might. So again, stay away from a method, a specific method, unless it's something that you've already researched and feel very comfortable with. I also then offer up some ways for you to write this purpose statement, but more importantly, I wanted to go to slide 35. I think I have, hold on just a second. Yeah, okay. So on page 35, you'll see writing a purpose statement, and it's just a template. And the template that I'm sharing here is it basically says this study is to blank. Anyway, you can see it in the PowerPoint deck. I have another deck that I'm going to share with you. Let's see, how do I get out of this? I might have messed up, folks. I'm not the biggest driver here. I want to get out of this. Let me see how I can. Okay, good. Here it is. So I have another deck where is that? I think it's here. Yeah. So and I'll share this in the class tomorrow as well. So I have a template that you can use if you're looking at a potential qualitative study, and it's just easy to follow. I have another slide that where are they? Another template that talks about a template for a quantitative purpose statement. And for those of you that are thinking that you need to do a mixed, I have a couple of different templates for mixed designs as well, and I'll share those out into the classroom as well. I think these will help you with this exercise in terms of putting together your 700 to 1,000 words that you're going to share in the peer-reviewed process. But again, let me stress this, folks. This is a developmental exercise. This is your first time at this, so be brave. Do your best. Put some good things down on paper, and then I'll react to those and provide you some very good feedback. And if you need to, I'm more than happy to sit down on one-on-one and have conversations with you and really help you flesh this out. I really believe that this is one of the most critical things that we can do in this class is help you really frame this thing. And so look at this exercise as a beginning for doing that. I'm going to, I think this is an appropriate place to pause for tonight. Let me just open it up for any questions or concerns that anybody might have, and then we'll call it an evening.
I have one question as to the problem statement and the introduction. Does the problem statement and the purpose statement go after the introduction?
It's a good question. So let me also share out with you sort of a, where is it at? I think it's, nope, no, that's not it. Yeah, it's. I'll share this out too, Akwanda. That I think your question was well made. So what I'll do is I'll share this research one-page research prospectus, and so it starts off with the research title, then it starts off with in your problem. So you do an introduction. It's called a foreshadow. So when you're introducing your research, you want to help the reader. You want to hook the reader. You want to introduce why this study is important, and then move to your problem statement. So your introduction happens, your foreshadow, and then you state your general research problem, and then your specific research problem, followed by your purpose statement. Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll share. I'll be maybe I'll overwhelm you guys with resources, but I'll share some of this in the class. So good question though, Aquanda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns, comments?
Yeah, this is Nick Whitney. I just have a real quick question for you. As we're doing the problem statements and so on, are we supposed to be building on the week 1, week 2, then the week 3 building on that and submitting it all in, or just its particular section on its own?
You can keep adding to it. You know, what I would. Yeah, it's a great question, Nick. Thank you, because I meant to bring this up. We're trying to build as we go through here is your week 8 paper, so that you don't have to do your week 8 paper in week 8. So if we can build all these components as we go along, it becomes more of an assembly than it does a mass all-nighter at the end. So let's think about this as a construction. And as I give you feedback, make those corrections as you go through. So when you're setting up or you're sharing your next draft, even though I may only be focusing on the research question, knowing that you've made the adjustments to your title, your problem, and your purpose statement along the way allows me the ability to look at that again and to maybe even help you fine-tune it even more. So think about this as a construction project that we're going to do over over the whole class.
Okay. In week 1, you gave us a week 8 format,
yes.
somewhat of a template. Are we just to be filling in each section as we go? That's what I do. Is that a set template, or do we need to vary based on our research?
It may vary a little bit. I think as all templates are just guides. Don't be constrained by it, but definitely use it as a way to begin to scaffold the work that you're doing. But it's the format that at a minimum that you'll have to have.
Okay, that helps me a lot. Thank you.
Great question. I appreciate it. I thought I heard another comment coming up.
This is Elaine. I've always heard that the title is supposed to be supposed to matter. So, the reader would say, or whomever would say, so what? Why do you have this topic? So what does it matter? So how will we know, hypothetically, for example, if I want to write on why bell peppers come in green, orange, red, what does it matter? What does it matter? You see what I'm saying? So how will we know if it's something that's really of interest to someone other than yourself?
Well, that's a good question. That's an excellent question. I think that comes back down to the value of it, the significance of your, why your study would be significant. I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. Now, it may not be significant if you're just trying to survey 100 people to figure out which color bell pepper is the best. Green, red, yellow, or purple. I've seen purple, by the way.
Okay.
So, but what might be, that might not be interesting on its own. But what if? And I'm just pretending here. I'm making this stuff up just so you know. But what happens if we find out that, or if your curiosity is really not just about which bell pepper color they like best, but perhaps different colors have different nutritional values, and that it turns out that red bell peppers will make you live 10 years longer than if you ate on a regular basis than green. All of a sudden, the study is very important. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's possible, But sometimes what happens in our curiosities that start off on a very shallow level about the color of bell peppers, when we start to get into the literature, when we start to do searches around the value of color in bell peppers, we may discover that there's a lot more that's been written about that than what we recognized. And we might just find a way to elevate or to make our curiosity more researchable and more valuable, and that the significance of your study begins to become more vibrant. I'm not saying that will happen, but that's why we get into the literature to find out, does our curiosity have value? Is it going to have significance in my field? And more importantly, and let me just I know we're over time, but let me leave this with everybody. This dissertation research that you're doing, you got to have the want to. And if you got the want to and you really create a good product, then it should serve as a battering ram for your career. This thing should open up doors for you. And so take your time in really building those kind of foundations. So anyway, great question. I know we're over time. I'm going to stop the record. I will post this in the classroom tomorrow morning along with some other resources. If there are other questions that I didn't get answered tonight, you can use the message function in the course room is now working. You can use the message function, or you can use the classroom cafe. Either one works fine for me. But please post it. Hey, enjoy this exercise. This is why you decided you wanted to go into a doctoral program. This is why you wanted a doctoral degree. This is the fun stuff. Have fun.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody have a good evening. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
You
All
too.
right, take care.
Thank you.
You too.